When police arrived at Zoraida and Alberto's home, they discovered a horrific scene. Zoraida and Alberto and their two young sons, who were only 10 and 7 years old, as well as their three dogs, they were all brutally murdered. Who would want this entire family gone? Zoraida and her family's death was part of a complicated and disturbing plot involving Zoraida's affair with a man named Nathaniel Huey Jr. But here's the thing, Nathaniel wasn't the only person involved in this disturbing and evil plot. Zoraida and Nathaniel met at work. They knew each other for about a year and started an affair in May 2023. Zoraida was married to her husband Alberto. They had 2 kids. Nathaniel, on the other hand, was in a 10+ year relationship with a woman named Ermelinda Palomo. For some time, they thought that no one knew about their affair, but they were wrong. At some point during their affair, Nathaniel's fiancée, Ermelinda, found out about what was going on, but instead of her completely losing it and confronting him, she kept it a secret. But she would come up with this crazy and disturbing plot to get revenge. And I'm not talking about revenge against Nathaniel necessarily. She targeted Zoraida and her family. Ermelinda began creating various social media accounts and pretended to be someone from the Mexican cartel. I know, this is crazy, psychotic, and it's really difficult to believe, but this is just what was going on.
On March 5th, 1974, 17-year-old Amy Bilig vanished while hitchhiking to her dad's office in Coconut Grove, Florida. A few days later, 16-year-old twins who lived in the neighborhood claimed they kidnapped Amy and wanted $30,000, but police discovered this was a hoax and the case went cold. But Amy's mom, Susan, never gave up. She traveled the country chasing down leads. However, soon she started receiving harassing phone calls from a man claiming to have Amy. This went on for 21 years until one day the caller accidentally used his cell phone instead of a payphone, allowing it to be traced back to Henry Blair, a man who had become obsessed with the case but had no connection to Amy, so her disappearance remains unsolved.
Let me share some things with you I just learned about money. There was a family in 2010 who was facing foreclosure on their home until they discovered a copy of a comic book that had the first ever appearance of Superman. They sold it at auction for $436,000, saving their home. Boston College offers a rule where employees' children can study for free if accepted. There was a janitor who worked at this college who has 5 kids, and they all got in, saving over $700,000 in their tuition. After a wealthy lawyer in Toronto passed away in 1926, in his will he promised his large fortune to whoever was the woman with the most children in Toronto. After over a decade of legal battles, 4 different women with 9 children each split the money, with the Toronto government taking the majority of it. To receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, you actually have to pay almost $100,000 and go through an entire application process.
A new found footage horror movie just hit video on demand called The House on Haunted Ground. It's described as like a clown possession paranormal. I'm into the description. Let's watch the trailer.
Hunters to another spine-chilling episode of The Other Side.
For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Tony, your guide to the paranormal.
And I'm Amy, your navigator through the unknown.
Tonight we have something truly terrifying in store for you.
We're here at the infamous Lockwood House, home of one of the most grisly murder sprees in recent history.
Not only are we entering this house, we are committed to stay the entire night.
Oh, okay.
No matter what we encounter.
We might be the first and only ones to have been in this house since the night the killer lost his life.
So what are we gonna find?
Oh. Oh, that was kind of creepy.
Tune in and find out.
As we venture into the other side.
I'm gonna be honest, I know that this is low budget, but I am such a sucker for movies in this genre, like going to explore a haunted abandoned place. I just love them. I'm curious to see what they were able to accomplish with this one.
They're watching you while you sleep.
This pedophile who lived in his parents' basement was just arrested on some incredibly disturbing charges. So this is David Edgar Joseph Rutter. He is from Ocala, Florida. And in June of 2025, after receiving a cyber tip, the Ocala Police Department executed a search warrant on this guy's home. Apparently, this guy who lived with his parents claimed that his computer and iPhone had been hacked, and that somehow CSAM had just gotten through to his devices. However, when investigators finally took a closer look at David's stuff, they were shocked. Now, according to a media release released by the Marion County Sheriff's Office, I'm just going to read this to you. It stated that many of the above files involved sadomasochistic sexual abuse of children as young as infants, and that some of the files involved animals. As it turned out, this guy, David, had uploaded files like that to the internet, and he had them in his possession. David had been sharing CSAM material with other pedophiles on the dark web for a while now. And also, I'm going to read this to you now, detectives allegedly found other AI-generated videos in Rutter's possession, which depicted early pubescent girls along with numerous printed pictures of clothed children and babies in his bedroom. On what they called David's primary device, according to this report, investigators also found, quote, child erotica images and 4 videos of child celebrities containing CSAM. Because of the nature of some of the material that was discovered on David's devices, investigators in Marion County in Florida believe that this guy may have had what they call, quote, live victims. So if you or anyone you know knows this man or knows anything about this man, please reach out to the Marion County Sheriff's Office. They are actively seeking information.
Here's what a security camera captured at an isolated gas station in Wisconsin. Look closely. Footage comes from a remote station near Highway 23. Early in the morning, while everything seemed quiet, the security cameras recorded something chilling. A creature, described by witnesses as a real werewolf, was seen moving between the gas pumps. Its estimated height was more than 2 meters. Too tall. Too fast. And clearly not human. Moments later, the creature disappeared into the nearby forest. But it didn't leave without a trace. Workers found deep growls recorded on audio, massive footprints pressed into the ground, and long scratch marks on parked vehicles. Since then, panic has spread among employees and nearby residents. Several witnesses claim that days before the incident, they heard strange noises at night and saw shadows moving near the road. Livestock has also gone missing in the surrounding areas. Local authorities have cordoned off the site, but they refuse to release official details or explanations. If you are in Wisconsin, locals are warning people not to approach isolated areas at night. Keep your lights on. Avoid walking alone. Whatever was captured on that camera was not a myth, the footage is real, and the situation is still developing. Have you noticed anything strange near where you live? Subscribe, or we'll never see each other again.
I'm going to share with you some stories I just learned about money. Judge Judy was earning almost $50 million a year at the peak of her success. And the cool story is that every 3 years, she would renegotiate her contract by having a dinner with CBS. But instead of an actual negotiation, she would just bring a sealed envelope with her salary demand and place it on the executive's part of the table. And one year, the executive brought his own envelope. She refused him and said, if I look inside of your envelope, it's a negotiation. And this is not a negotiation. She definitely knew her worth. With Grand Theft Auto 6, if it ever comes out, estimating to be about $2 billion to develop, here are a few things cheaper than that. Infinity War and Endgame both combined were $800 million. The second Queen Mary was $900 million. Amazon buying the entire company of Twitch was $970 million. The Golden Gate Bridge cost $1 billion to make. The Mars rover was $1 billion.
You guys ever heard the story about how Ashton Kutcher's date got murdered? It's a super weird story, and there are so many convoluted things in this story and really kind of weird moments that we need to talk about. In 2001, Ashton Kutcher went to pick up his date, Ashley Ellerin, at her Hollywood home. He was at her door, she didn't answer, so he left. He went to go to another party then. But some accounts actually say that he found the body, called it red wine on the floor, and decided to go at another party and made a suspicious call to somebody. Many people suspect he did this not to tarnish his Hollywood career. Honestly, that would make sense, you know what I mean? He would also be suspect number 1 if he found that body, especially because he was going to take this girl on a date. That looked just suspicious already. Now, what wasn't known at the time was Michael Gargiulo, the Hollywood Ripper as his name would be, actually murdered her 2 hours earlier and apparently murdered somebody else as well. And the stabbing was vicious. This young woman got stabbed 47 times. The case went cold and 20 years go by. Ashton Kutcher in 2019 finally testified for his old date. All the information he had, helped the police and aligned with what they had as well, so they ended up locking this guy up and sentencing him to life in prison and then death row. And this is on record that he looked inside the window because she wasn't answering and saw red wine spilled on the ground by her body. Now, it does not take a lot of common sense at all to know that that is not red wine. I really do believe that he didn't want to endanger his career and stuff, and he would be suspect number one, like I said, And now, alluding back, this happened in 2001. The trial went cold for 20 years. In 2005, 4 years after he murdered Ashton Kutcher's date, he went on to murder another lady with a family of 4. And then he tried to kill another lady by the name of Michelle Murphy in 2008, 7 years after that 2001 event. And she fought him off, and he left a trail of blood that got him arrested. Now, once again, I know I said he was sentenced to death, but California hasn't executed somebody since 2006, and he was sentenced to death in 2021. California chose not to execute him, but he was extradited to Illinois to face a trial for another murder that this guy committed in 1993. The crazy part is, I'm not sure why they even said he was on death row when it's not even a thing over there. It's confusing, I know. But Illinois also has not even sentenced somebody to death row since 1999 or something like that. At the end of the day, though, this guy will be in prison for the rest of his life, regardless of where he may be. What are your thoughts on this story, guys? I know this story has a lot of weird, convoluted details, but I do think it's an interesting one to talk about.
This is the horror game where mommy wants to make you perfect. Let's talk about a terrifying horror game that deals with drama. Broken Lore Unfollow. This is one of those horror games that takes the personal traumas of the main character and manifests them into something real. We play as a character named Anne who's been dealing with mental abuse both inside and outside of school. Her classmates relentlessly bully her for her weight, while her mother is contributing to this too and wants to turn Anne into the perfect version of her child. All of these things have caused Anne to turn to social media for validation, which has done major damage to her mental health. So, okay, all of this makes sense, but then why are there monsters everywhere? Why does my mother look like this? Why is she trying to cut me apart? Where are we actually in this game? This is the third game in the Broken Lore series, and there's always been something lurking in the background. Elysium Technologies connects all of these games together, but how? I do have a full playthrough with all the secrets on my channel in both endings, but I really think these games are building towards something huge.
Here's a terrifying clip of a Ukrainian soldier showing symptoms of rabies. Throughout the video, he tries to drink water but physically can't. This reaction is called hydrophobia, one of the clearest signs that rabies has reached the brain. Rabies is one of the deadliest diseases known. If treated immediately after exposure before symptoms appear, it's almost always preventable. But once symptoms like difficulty swallowing, confusion, or agitation begin, the virus has already caused significant neurological damage. At this stage, survival is so rare that statistically, a person has a better chance of surviving a gunshot wound to the head than surviving symptomatic rabies. There's no proven cure, and death is usually inevitable once symptoms appear.
Her injuries were so brutal that people said she resembled Miss Pac-Man. 32-year-old Alejandro Ico Chubb was a mother of 3 from Guatemala. She was in a relationship with 42-year-old Mario Tut Ical, but behind closed doors, it was a completely different story. On October 29th of 2018, Mario came home and he was filled with jealousy. He believed that Alejandra wasn't being truthful about seeing her sister, and instead of confronting her about it, he completely lost control. He grabbed a machete and stormed into the bedroom where Alejandra was resting, and in a fit of rage, he struck with full force, severing both of her hands and leaving a horrific wound across her face from ear to ear. The violence was so extreme that later on people would compare her face wounds to the arcade character Miss Pac-Man. To make matters even worse, Alejandra was alive for the entire thing. Her children were watching and they were screaming in the background while Mario was recording it all. Mario fled the scene, and since neighbors could hear screaming coming from their home, they waited for Mario to leave and then they went to go check on Alejandra. Once they went to go check on her, she was barely alive, and once help finally arrived, it was already too late. 2 days later, Mario was captured, and when he was questioned, he admitted to everything and stated that jealousy was his motive. In August of 2023, nearly 5 years later, Mario was sentenced to 50 years in prison for femicide.
Bill and Hillary Clinton are refusing to comply with the Epstein probe, and both Bill and Hillary have publicly stated that they are going to defy the subpoena and skip their depositions in the alleged investigation into Epstein. Bill and Hillary Clinton are dirty. We know this. We know this from all the different stories that have emerged about them over the years. And before we get into this, let me remind you that Bill Clinton has been accused of raping many women over the years. So it's not like this guy being a sexual predator is out of question. However, Bill and Hillary released this joint statement yesterday after they defied a subpoena and Hillary failed to appear on Wednesday morning for her scheduled deposition statements. Now, in this letter, Bill and Hillary Clinton state that they are not going to comply with the Epstein investigation because they essentially feel like this is a witch hunt. You can pause this and read the text of this letter for yourself. It's a pretty long, lengthy letter, but as you can see here, it was signed at the end by Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Now, it's known that Epstein visited the Clinton White House at least 17 times. These are just the times that we actually know about that were recorded. And we know that Epstein and Ghislaine and Clinton, they were all extremely good friends. They frequently traveled together. There are photographs of Bill Clinton with alleged Epstein victims. There are allegations, obviously, made by Epstein victims against Clinton. So he is clearly not innocent in this story. And obviously, Hillary would have known all about this. She would have known his travel plans. She would have traveled with him at times. She would have known anything and everything about Epstein. She was, after all, the first lady at the time that Epstein was visiting the White House. And it's a commonly held belief that the Epstein intelligence gathering operation was specifically created to target Bill Clinton while he was in the White House. And then it just blossomed into this extremely evil, ugly beast. They do make some good points in this letter, though. They state, the facts speak for themselves. You subpoenaed 8 people in addition to us. You dismissed 7 of those 8 without any of them saying a single word to you. You made no attempt to force them to appear. In fact, since you started your investigation last year, you have interviewed a total of 2 people. 2. Now, I don't think that Bill and Hillary are innocent. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying at all. But in a way, I do agree with what they're saying because this Epstein investigation has been not interviewed witnesses. They have not interviewed Epstein victims. They have not interviewed people that are important to. And it is true, even though I believe that Bill and Hillary are completely complicit in the Epstein thing, the focus is being placed on them so that the focus isn't placed on other individuals. Mainly the people with all of the power right now who are technically in charge of the entire investigation. So I do think that they should compel Bill and Hillary to come in to testify, and I think they should subpoena other people, like President Donald Trump. He probably knows a lot about Epstein that he could tell investigators if they actually got off their asses and started investigating. Because you can claim all day that you're investigating, but if you're not actually investigating, then all you're doing is actively perpetuating a massive cover-up.
This was the moment an Indonesian conservationist broke down in tears after finally witnessing one of the rarest flowers on Earth bloom. After searching the rainforests of Sumatra for 13 years, Diki Andriki and his team found a Rafflesia, a parasitic flower often nicknamed a corpse flower because it releases a powerful odor of rotting flesh to attract insects. The plant spends most of its life hidden inside a host vine and only blooms for a few days, making sightings incredibly rare as researchers never even see one in their lifetime. When the massive, foul-smelling flower began to open in front of him, the weight of more than a decade of dangerous jungle expeditions and failed searches finally hit. This is one of the rarest atmospheric events ever caught on video. Upward lightning erupting from the summit of Volcán de Agua in Guatemala. The bolts appear to tear straight out of the volcano, making it look less like weather and more like something unnatural unfolding in real time. Unlike normal lightning that strikes downward from clouds, this phenomenon shoots upward from the ground into the storm above, triggered by intense electrical imbalance. It's so uncommon that storm chasers never even see it once in their lifetime, and it's almost never captured this clearly over a populated city.
Alabama is home to a weather wizard. He was born in Greenville before he eventually moved to Tuscaloosa. At the University of Alabama, he started in radio and then moved to TV news and weather. And he's covered weather in Tuscaloosa, Montgomery, Dallas, and Birmingham, where he spent the majority of his career. What makes him unique is that from the 70s to the 90s, he covered weather with no formal training. And even though he was officially certified in the 90s, he's been covering major storms in Alabama for decades with great finesse and accuracy. Some say that his suspenders are the key to his magic and that when he takes his suit jacket off, he's able to unleash his full power. And if people want evidence, they can look back to his 10-hour wall-to-wall storm coverage. Something that very few meteorologists can say they've ever done. He's also one of the most decorated meteorologists in the entire country. And he's alleged to have a high-level intellect, extreme stamina, an unrelenting wit, and the ability to see weather events before they happen. Some say his ability to wield the mystical weather arts comes from this thing called respecting the polygon. And the rest just say it's from experience and hard work. Either way, James Spann is one legend that Alabama is proud to have.
Another true crime story of how they were caught. In Virginia Beach, Virginia, Brianna Armstrong, who worked as a massage therapist, failed to show up for work. She was always reliable, and coworkers couldn't get a hold of her through Facebook Messenger, and she wasn't answering text or phone. She wasn't checked into any hospitals, and her estranged husband filed a missing persons report. The ex, who was cleared by an alibi, said that Brianna had mentioned hanging out with a friend named Kim before she went missing. Brianna's cell phone had not been used in 4 days, so police went to her residence to collect DNA just in case it turned out to be more than a missing person case. 8 days later, after she went missing, her car was found in a shopping center. Her purse, phone, cards, even her shoes, and a pendant she never took off were inside the vehicle. Police were able to check her phone that was found in her purse and saw that the last outgoing call from her was to somebody named Kim. When police called Kim's phone number, a man named Justin Cornell answered the phone. He said Brianna had been over to his house the day she went missing. They both drank moonshine together, and then she left, but he was concerned about her alcohol use. Justin worked as a massage therapist at the same place Brianna worked, and some co-workers believed the two were dating. Weeks later, a bicyclist would find suspicious trash bags in the Great Dismal Swamp area in Virginia. The bicyclist observed a foul smell and saw a bone sticking out of the bag, and he called police. Cadaver dogs would search the swamp, and a skull was recovered. Through dental records, it was identified as Brianna. An autopsy showed that just about every joint of her body was dismembered. Even Brianna's breasts were removed from her torso. Police believe someone with anatomical knowledge would have been the person to commit this crime. Police would go back to Justin's house and see an obsession with edged weapons as they found knives all over the place, swords on the wall, other edged weapons on the countertop. Police found trash bags in Justin's house that were consistent with the bags found at the swamp. Also, there was trash inside those bags that connected back to Justin. The way police connected the trash to Justin was they took buccal swabs of Justin's DNA, and that DNA matched trash found inside those bags found in the swamp. They also discovered some bathroom tiles had been recently replaced. Luminol would detect the presence of blood all over in Justin's bathroom, along the tub and the floor area. Justin was ultimately arrested and convicted, sentenced to 40 years in prison, and that was how he was caught.
These parents hid their daughter's body inside of their family restaurant. On January 9th of 2017, restaurant owner Liang Zhao had called 911 to report his 5-year-old daughter Ashley as missing. He explained that he had just picked up his oldest daughter from school and that neither him or his wife Ming Ming had saw Ashley for several hours. The dispatcher then asked if it was possible that someone inside the restaurant could have taken Ashley. Liang confirmed that it was just him and his wife in the kitchen when they last saw Ashley. Liang believed it was more likely that Ashley had got out of the back door and got lost outside. On January 10th in the afternoon, authorities had issued a statewide endangered child alert for Ashley. Just hours after this alert, Ashley's body would be located in the restaurant's kitchen freezer unit where they often kept their food. On January 11th, Liang and Ming were arrested and the interrogation started. Liang stated that when he returned to the restaurant, he saw that Ming was frustrated with Ashley. He explained that Ming was frustrated with Ashley because she urinated and pooped on herself. She then struck Ashley's head against the floor, which made her lose consciousness and struggle to breathe. Ashley was then unresponsive and was making a loud aspirating noise with bile coming out of her mouth. Liang then took her to the bathroom to clean her up before realizing that she had stopped breathing. Ming was living in the United States illegally, and this scared Liang to become involved with the police because they could easily find out her immigration status. Liang didn't think that the police would thoroughly investigate Ashley's disappearance, so that's the reason why he helped hide Ashley's body in the kitchen. While all of this was going down, they were still serving their customers. On October 12th, Ming was charged with murder and pled not guilty by reason of insanity. By December 29th, Ming ended up taking a plea deal and was sentenced to 22 years in prison and most likely will be sent back to China after she is released. On January 18th of 2018, Liang agreed to testify against his wife for a lesser charge and was sentenced to 12 years in prison.
I was offered $100,000 to go on a brand trip to Dubai, and here's why I backed out of it last minute, because I found out some really disturbing details about.
Yes, we need to talk about the porta potty parties. This is a common story that you'll hear on the internet. A woman with some sort of social media presence will be invited by a modeling agency, invited to go to Dubai for a great opportunity. The woman will be told that she'll get lots of cash in return for her trip. They say that they'll pay for her food, her flights, her lodging, everything. But they also stipulate that once you get there, there may be some things that you have to do. According to some of these women, the things that they're asked to do are straight out of a horror film. Some women have claimed that the men at these parties like to put women on meat hooks, like something out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And once the women are up in the air, they beat them mercilessly. Other women have claimed that these men at these parties like to urinate and defecate in and on them. And others have said that they were either forced to or they watched someone get forced to have relations with animals. And something really disturbing to me is that according to some of these stories, the men who are paying for these things and engaging in these acts are taking photos and videos of it this entire time. So that means that somewhere in that country there is a database, a huge library of the most disgusting videos and photos that a human being can imagine. And why stop with women? I'm sure that there have been children present at these parties, especially knowing how the wealthy and elite like to operate. This is a disturbing reality. And for people in America or other countries that are watching this thinking that, yeah, this only happens over there, that is not true in the slightest. I can guarantee you that there are elite members of American society, English society, all societies from around the world that fly to Dubai to take part in these parties. Money can really buy you anything in the world. And we've seen it so many different times with child sex tourism and how that is a huge problem. I can guarantee you that there are some people who are living a completely normal life, especially here in America. Maybe they're doctors, maybe they're business people, who fly over to Dubai to take part in these things, film it, videotape it, take photos of it, enjoy their time, and then fly back to America and, basically act like it never happened. It's been my life mission to expose these people, so if you want to follow along on my journey, I host the show The Conspiracy Files on YouTube and all streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you want to take a trip down the rabbit hole with me, consider checking the show out.
People are calling this the UK version of the Idaho 4 murder case. It was the 24th of July 2024 in Durley Beach in Bournemouth. It was a gorgeous summer evening and two girls were just sat round enjoying the full moon by a fire. These were Amy Gray and Leanne Miles. Amy was 34 and a football coach from Poole in Dorset. She was an absolutely lovely woman, so much fun to be around, and she just had this infectious laugh. She was always having a joke around, especially with her wife Sian. The pair were just so in love and really looking forward to a future together. Now, Amy was sat round with her friend Leanne, like I said, and they were just chilling, enjoying the beach, enjoying the summer evening. It was around 11:30 p.m, so they weren't going to be out much longer anyway. Then a man suddenly appeared out of nowhere with a knife. I cannot imagine anything more terrifying than this. It was dark. They had no clue what the hell was going on. They couldn't make out who the hell this person was. And he just started slashing at them with the weapon. In an instant, the night just went from relaxed and chilled to sheer horror. And there was obviously a huge commotion. I mean, these girls were screaming and trying to run for their lives. This man stabbed Leanne multiple times, and Amy was just trying desperately to grab him off her. Leanne managed to struggle free and try and run across the sand, but the man grabbed her again. By this point, he'd frantically stabbed Amy too, 10 times. She lay lifeless on the beach, bleeding to death, as this man ran forward and lunged at Leanne. Now, thankfully, by some miracle, two men did happen to be walking by at this point, and they did intervene. They grabbed the man off Leanne, and she was just clinging on to life. She had 20 stab wounds, but miraculously managed to pull through. But tragically, it was too late for Amy. One minute she was enjoying a summer evening with her friend, and the next she was dead. And in the chaos, the attacker managed to flee. He turned out to be criminology student Nassan Sadi, aged just 21. Now, I guess people are comparing this to the Idaho 4 case because this guy was obsessed with crime, but this was more than just an interest. It was more than just something he was studying. He was constantly asking lecturers weird questions. He even once asked a lecturer how to get away with murder, and she'd actually joked back to him like, "Are you thinking of committing one?" He attended the University of Greenwich, and behind the scenes he'd been harbouring a dangerous obsession. He'd been collecting knives and researching where to commit the perfect murder. He'd strangely been researching whether pebbles are easier to run on than sand, and which hotels had CCTV. He'd repeatedly visited that specific beach and surveyed it. Now, this reminded me of the Stephen Paddock case that I did cover on my podcast, when Stephen Paddock went to Vegas and was staying in a hotel and was like surveying the area before he did his mass attack. Nassan seemed to also be looking online to get kind of inspiration, I guess, from previous murders. He'd actually looked into the Brianna Jai murder online, which again I covered on my podcast, an incredibly harrowing knife murder. Police found that he'd also recently been to see the Strangers film too. Now, I don't know whether you guys think there is any coincidence there, whether this was just a guy interested in horror films, or was he looking for inspiration? Turned out armed police did manage to thankfully track him down and later stormed his house and handcuffed him. And even in the body cam footage, it just absolutely enraged me because he's just so nonchalant. His motive for the killings was found to be just literally because he kept getting rejected by girls. And over time, he just developed this rage towards women. Now, he would later claim in court that this was a case of mistaken identity and they had the wrong guy, but obviously it wasn't. A jury did find him guilty after a 9-day trial and he got life with a minimum of 39 years.